The widow laughed, and the sound tore out of her throat like something wild breaking free from a cage she had locked 6 months ago when they buried her husband in the hard Dakota earth. Zara Thorne stood in the mud outside the spring social hall in Deadwood, her black dress soaked to the knees, staring at the tall cowboy, who had just executed the most absurd series of movements she had ever witnessed in her 24 years of living. He was still hopping on one leg, arms windmilling, his hat somewhere in the puddle behind him, and the laughter kept coming despite her best efforts to swallow it back down. She pressed both hands to her mouth, horror flooding through her veins as the other townspeople turned to stare. "Stop," she managed to gasp. "Please stop." The cowboy, a lean man with sun-weathered skin and hair the color of autumn wheat, planted both feet in the mud and stood perfectly still. He said nothing. His face showed no embarrassment, no triumph, nothing at all except perhaps the faintest question in his gray eyes. Zara felt the smile die on her lips as quickly as it had arrived. Shame crashed over her like a wave. She had sworn, standing over Thomas's grave with his mother weeping beside her, that she would never smile again, that she would honor his memory with appropriate solemnity, that she would not dishonor what they had shared by returning too quickly to the thoughtless pleasures of the living. "I should not have," she whispered, but the cowboy was already walking away, retrieving his hat from the mud with one smooth motion and heading toward the livery without a backward glance. Inside the social hall, Martha Brennan caught Zara's arm as she tried to slip past toward the door. "Who was that man?" "I do not know." Zara's voice came out sharper than she intended. "I was leaving. The evening air was too close." "That was Lucas Ashford," Martha said, her grip tightening. "He works the trail drives between here and Cheyenne, keeps to himself mostly. I have never heard him say more than 5 words at a time." Zara pulled her arm free and walked into the cool April evening, leaving the music and chatter behind. Her boarding house room waited 3 streets away, and she climbed the stairs with leaden feet, aware that she had broken something tonight that could not be mended. The careful edifice of her grief had cracked, and she did not know how to repair it. She did not sleep that night. The memory of her own laughter haunted her, and worse, the memory of the feeling that had accompanied it. For 30 seconds, maybe less, she had forgotten that Thomas was dead. She had simply been a woman watching a ridiculous man do a ridiculous dance, and some part of her that she thought had died with her husband had flickered back to life. When dawn came gray and cold through her window, Zara rose and dressed in the same black dress, the one she had worn every day since the funeral. She had 2 others just like it. She pinned her dark hair back with the jet mourning pins Thomas's mother had given her and went downstairs to help Mrs. Chen prepare breakfast for the other boarders. The kitchen was warm, smelling of coffee and frying bacon, and Zara fell into the familiar rhythm of work. Mrs. Chen was a small Chinese woman whose husband had died in the mines 3 years earlier, and she had never remarried. She ran her boarding house with quiet efficiency and did not ask Zara about the social or why she had returned so early. "Wood box is empty," Mrs. Chen said, nodding toward the stove. Zara went to the back door and stopped. The wood box on the porch was full, split logs stacked neatly to the brim. She had emptied it herself yesterday evening before leaving for the social. She stood staring at the wood for a long moment before going back inside. "Someone filled it," she said. Mrs. Chen glanced up from the bacon. "Good." 2 days later, Zara found a handful of prairie wildflowers on the boarding house step when she went out to sweep. They were tied with a blade of grass, nothing fancy, just white and yellow blooms that grew in the hills beyond town. She picked them up and looked around, but the street was empty except for a freight wagon rumbling past. She put them in water in her room and tried not to think about gray eyes and a man who danced like a fool to make a stranger laugh. Thomas's brother arrived on a Friday afternoon, riding in from his ranch 30 miles south with his wife and 2 children. Robert Thorne was 10 years older than Thomas had been, a prosperous rancher with strong opinions about how widows should behave. He found Zara in the boarding house parlor mending sheets for Mrs. Chen. "You look well," he said, and it sounded like an accusation. "Thank you." Zara kept her eyes on her needle. "My wife tells me you were seen at the spring social." Robert sat down across from her, his bulk filling the delicate chair. Laughing. Zara's needle stilled. "Who told her that? Does it matter? Zara, it has been only 6 months. 6 months since we laid my brother in the ground. His mother is still prostrate with grief, and here you are attending dances and carrying on as though he never existed." The unfairness of it stung like a slap. "I carry on because I must eat, because I have no ranch, no land, no income except what I can earn with my own hands." Thomas left nothing but debts from his prospecting ventures, and you know that as well as I do. You could have come to live with us. I offered. You offered to take me in as an unpaid servant for your wife. I declined. Zara set down her mending and met his eyes. "I am managing adequately here." "By laughing at public gatherings." Robert leaned forward. "The family has a reputation to uphold. People expect a certain dignity from Thomas's widow. They expect you to honor his memory properly." "I honor his memory every day." Zara's voice shook despite her effort to control it. "Every single day I wake up and remember he is gone. Do not presume to tell me how to grieve. Then perhaps you should grieve less publicly." Robert stood, adjusting his hat. "I am saying this for your own good, Zara. People talk. They judge. If you wish to remain respectable, you need to conduct yourself with more restraint." He left, and Zara sat holding the mending in trembling hands. The shame that had been gnawing at her since the social doubled and redoubled. Robert was right. Everyone would be talking about the widow who laughed after only 6 months. Everyone would be judging her, measuring her grief and finding it wanting. She did not attend any more socials. She went to work at the boarding house, went to church on Sunday mornings, and returned to her room. She avoided Main Street when she could, because that was where the cowboys gathered when they were in town, and she did not want to accidentally encounter the man who had danced. But the wildflowers kept appearing. Every few days she would find them on the step or tucked into the wood box, or once, inexplicably, balanced on her windowsill on the 2nd floor. She never saw who left them, though she began to suspect. 3 weeks after Robert's visit, Zara woke to find that someone had repaired the broken step on the back porch, the one Mrs. Chen had been meaning to fix all spring. The wood was fresh cut pine, fitted perfectly into place. "You see who did this?" Zara asked Mrs. Chen at breakfast. The older woman shrugged. "Early morning. I hear hammer, I look, I see tall man. He finish, he leave." "What did he look like?" "Cowboy." Mrs. Chen poured coffee with the air of someone who had said all she intended to say on the subject. That afternoon, Zara walked to the livery stable where Martha Brennan had said Lucas Ashford worked. She found him in one of the back stalls, brushing down a roan mare with long, steady strokes. He looked up when her shadow fell across the doorway and nodded once. "Mr. Ashford," she said, and waited. He continued brushing the horse. "Did you repair Mrs. Chen's step this morning?" Another nod. "And the wood box? You have been filling the wood box." Not a nod this time, but not a denial either. He moved to the horse's other side and kept working. Zara felt frustration building in her chest. "Why?" Lucas paused, the brush held against the mare's flank. When he spoke, his voice was rough from disuse, the words coming slowly as though he had to pull them up from somewhere deep. "Needed doing." There are many things in Deadwood that need doing. Why Mrs. Chen's boarding house particularly? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something in his face that made her breath catch. It was not pity exactly, but a kind of recognition. A knowing. Lost someone, he said finally. Long time back, saw you that night, saw you trying so hard not to feel anything good, recognized that. So you made a fool of yourself to force me to laugh. Zara heard the bitterness in her own voice. That was cruel, probably. He went back to brushing. But you needed it. You do not know what I need. But even as she said it, Zara felt the lie in the words. That laugh had been like water in a desert, and she had been parched without knowing it. I am in mourning. There are expectations, proper behavior. For how long? The question caught her off guard. What? How long are you supposed to feel nothing? Lucas set down the brush and faced her fully. His gray eyes were steady, patient. Year, 2 years, rest of your life. I loved him. Zara's voice broke. I loved my husband, and he has been dead for only 6 months. 6 months is nothing. People expect me to mourn for at least a year, probably 2. His family expects it. His mother is still wearing full mourning, and I should be doing the same with proper dedication, not laughing at dances and accepting flowers from strange men. I am not that strange. It might have been a joke, but Lucas delivered it with such a straight face that Zara could not tell. And I am not asking you to stop mourning. I am just trying to help with the chores. Why? He considered this for a long moment, running one hand along the mare's neck. Because you look like you are drowning, and I know what that feels like, because helping with chores is something I can do. I am not good with words, never have been, but I can split wood and fix steps and leave flowers. Seems like you could use someone doing those things. Zara felt tears prickling behind her eyes and fought them back. What did you lose? You said you lost someone, brother. 10 years ago in the war. I was 16. He was 20. Lucas picked up the brush again, his movements careful and controlled. Took me a long time to figure out that living was not the same as forgetting, that I could miss him and still feel good things sometimes. 10 years, Zara whispered. It has been 10 years and you still think about him. Every day, he glanced at her. But I can also think about other things now, can laugh without feeling guilty, can wake up some mornings and feel glad to be alive. That does not mean I loved him less. Zara stood in the stable doorway, the smell of hay and horses surrounding her, and felt something shift inside her chest. Not the sharp crack of that first laugh, but a gentler movement, like ice beginning to thaw. I should go, she said. Mrs. Chen will be expecting me. Lucas nodded and returned to his work. Zara walked back to the boarding house with her thoughts spinning. She had been so certain that grief was something you owed the dead, a debt that had to be paid in full before you could return to living. But Lucas had suggested something different. That maybe grief and joy could exist together. That maybe one did not cancel out the other. That night she took the wildflowers from her windowsill and really looked at them for the first time. They were simple prairie blooms, the kind Thomas used to bring her when they were courting. He would ride in from his latest prospecting venture, with his pockets full of rocks he swore would make their fortune, and his hat full of flowers. And she would laugh at him, because the flowers were worth more than the rocks ever turned out to be. She missed him. God, she missed him so much some days it felt like her chest was caving in. But she was also tired, tired of the weight of constant sorrow, tired of measuring every moment against some invisible standard of proper grief, tired of feeling guilty for any flicker of happiness that tried to take root. The next morning she left her room before dawn and found Lucas already at work filling the wood box. He looked up when she opened the door, his expression unreadable in the gray light. "Good morning," she said. He nodded. "Would you like some coffee? Mrs. Chen will have it ready soon." Lucas hesitated, then shook his head. Need to get to the livery, just wanted to finish this first. You do not have to keep doing this, Zara said. The chores, I mean, I appreciate it, but I do not want you to feel obligated. I do not feel obligated. He stacked the last log and straightened. I want to help. Why? Already told you. Tell me again. Lucas looked at her for a long moment. Because when I lost my brother, nobody helped me figure out how to keep living. I had to figure it out alone, and it took too long. I wasted years feeling guilty for being alive. I see you headed down that same path, and I am thinking maybe I can make it a little easier. That is all. That is not all, Zara said quietly. Is it? He picked up his axe and turned to go, then stopped. No, that is not all, but the rest can wait until you are ready to hear it. He walked away into the dawn, and Zara stood on the porch watching him go. Her heart was beating too fast, and she recognized the feeling with a jolt of surprise and guilt. She was interested in him, not just grateful for his help, but interested in the man himself. The quiet way he moved through the world, the economy of his words, the kindness in his actions. She went inside and helped Mrs. Chen with breakfast, her mind churning. This was wrong. She should not be thinking about another man. Thomas had been dead for only 6 months. It was too soon. Far too soon. But Lucas's words kept echoing in her head. How long are you supposed to feel nothing? Over the following weeks, Zara found herself watching for Lucas around town. She saw him occasionally, always working. He helped old Mr. Peterson load his wagon at the general store. He carried lumber for the new schoolhouse they were building on the east side of town. He never seemed to stop moving, never seemed to need rest or acknowledgement. She learned more about him in bits and pieces from other people. He had come to Deadwood 2 years ago from somewhere back east. He worked trail drives in the summer and hired out for odd jobs in town during the winter. He lived in a small room above the livery and spent almost nothing on himself. Martha Brennan said he was saving money to buy land, that he wanted his own ranch someday. He is a good man, Martha said one afternoon as they worked together on the church quilting circle. Quiet but good, reliable, not like some of these cowboys who drink away their wages and start fights every Saturday night. Zara kept her eyes on her stitching. I suppose. He has been asking about you, Martha added, her voice carefully casual. Not directly, mind you, but he asks Mrs. Chen how you are doing, whether you are eating properly, whether you seem well. He should not be asking about me. But Zara felt warmth spreading through her chest even as she said it. People will talk. People are already talking. They talked when you laughed at the social. They talked when he started leaving you flowers. They are talking now. Martha set down her needle and looked at Zara directly. The question is, do you care? I should care. I am a widow. There are rules about how I am supposed to behave. Rules made by people who are not living your life. Martha picked up her needle again. My mother mourned my father for 5 years. Wore black every day, never smiled, never went to any gatherings. And then one day she just died. Doctors said it was her heart, but I always thought she died of grief. She chose sorrow over living and it killed her. I do not want to see you make that same choice. Zara had no answer to that. She finished her section of the quilt and walked home through the warm June afternoon, her thoughts troubled. She knew Martha was right. She could feel the weight of her prolonged mourning like a stone around her neck, dragging her down. But every time she thought about letting it go, about allowing herself to feel something other than sadness, Robert's words came back to her. His judgment. His certainty that she was dishonoring Thomas's memory. That evening she found a note tucked into the wood box. The handwriting was rough but legible. Going out on a trail drive tomorrow. Back in 8 weeks. Someone else will fill the wood box while I am gone. That was all. No signature, no greeting, just the information delivered plain and simple. Zara folded the note and put it in her pocket, surprised by the hollow feeling in her chest. 8 weeks suddenly seemed like a very long time. Lucas left before dawn the next morning with a herd of cattle headed for Cheyenne. Zara watched from her window as the cowboys moved through town in the gray light, heard the lowing of the cattle and the shouts of the men. She told herself she was not looking for one particular tall figure among them, but she was lying. True to his word, someone filled the wood box while he was gone. Probably he had paid one of the boys in town to do it. The flowers stopped appearing, though, and Zara was surprised by how much she missed them. Robert came to visit again in mid-July, and this time he brought Thomas's mother with him. Zara Thorne was a small, bird-like woman dressed head to toe in black crepe, her face hidden behind a heavy veil. She had aged 20 years in the 6 months since Zara had last seen her. "Dear girl," Sarah said, her voice muffled by the veil. "How are you managing?" "Well enough." Zara poured tea in the boarding-house parlor while Mrs. Chen hovered protectively in the doorway. "How are you, Sarah?" "As well as can be expected for a mother who has lost her son." Sarah's hands shook as she took the teacup. "Every day is a trial. Every morning I wake and remember all over again that he is gone. I do not think I shall ever recover." Robert cleared his throat. "Mother has been concerned about you, Zara. She has heard some disturbing reports about your behavior." "What reports?" But Zara knew what was coming, that you have been receiving attentions from a cowboy. Sarah leaned forward, and even through the veil, Zara could feel the weight of her gaze. "That he has been leaving you gifts, that people are talking about the two of you. He has been helping with chores around the boarding house. That is all." Zara kept her voice steady with effort. "There is nothing improper in it." "Everything is improper in it," Robert snapped. "You are a widow. You should not be accepting help from unmarried men. You should not be encouraging any kind of attention. It looks bad, Zara. It makes people think you are not properly devoted to Thomas's memory." "I was devoted to Thomas while he lived, and I mourn him now that he is dead." Zara set down her teacup with a sharp click. "But I am also alive, and I have to find a way to keep living. I have to eat, I have to work, I have to exist in the world. I cannot simply stop being a person because Thomas died." "No one is asking you to stop being a person," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "We are just asking you to show proper respect, to wait a decent interval before you start accepting courtship from other men. He is not courting me, he is being kind." But as Zara said it, she wondered if it was true, the flowers, the chores, the way he had looked at her that day in the stable. Maybe it was courtship of a sort, a very slow, very patient courtship from a man who understood grief. Kindness from a man always has a motive. Robert stood, clearly done with the conversation. "I am telling you this as family, Zara. You need to put a stop to whatever is happening between you and this cowboy. You need to observe proper mourning for at least another year, preferably 2. If you do not, you will lose the respect of this community, and you will dishonor Thomas's memory." They left, and Zara sat in the empty parlor feeling sick. Mrs. Chen came in and started clearing the tea things, her movements sharp with disapproval. "They wrong," Mrs. Chen said. "You good wife, you mourn enough." "Have I?" Zara looked up at her. "It has been only 8 months. Maybe they are right. Maybe I am being disrespectful. My husband dead 3 years. I mourn 1 year, proper Chinese way. Then I stop wearing mourning clothes, I open boarding house, I keep living. Some people say I should mourn longer. I say they can mourn however long they want, but they not living my life." Mrs. Chen picked up the tray. "You want to be sad rest of your life. You want to be like her, covered in veils and tears forever." "No," Zara whispered. "No, I do not want that." "Then stop listening to them. Listen to yourself. Your heart knows what you need." But that was the problem. Zara did not trust her heart anymore. Her heart had loved Thomas and then he had died, and now her heart seemed to be pulling her toward another man when it was far too soon. Her heart seemed like a traitor. Lucas returned in late August, lean and sunburned from weeks on the trail. Zara saw him ride into town from her window, saw him dismount at the livery with the stiff movements of a man who had spent too many hours in the saddle. She told herself not to go down there. Told herself to stay in her room and maintain proper distance. She went anyway. She found him in the same stall as before, tending to his horse's feet. He looked up when she came in, and something crossed his face that might have been pleasure. "You are back," she said, then felt foolish for stating the obvious. Few days ago, been getting the horses settled. He straightened, brushing dirt from his hands. "You look thinner. Have you been eating?" "I have been eating fine." But it was not entirely true. The confrontation with Robert and Sarah had stolen her appetite for weeks. How was the drive? Long, hot, lost 3 head to a river crossing, but that is better than expected. He studied her face. "What happened while I was gone?" "Nothing happened. You are a bad liar." Lucas moved closer and Zara caught the smell of horse and leather and sweat. "Something happened. Tell me." So she told him. About Robert and Sarah, about their demands that she observe proper mourning, about the guilt that had been eating at her ever since. Lucas listened without interrupting, his gray eyes never leaving her face. "What do you want?" he asked when she finished. "What? What do you want, Zara? Not what they want, not what is proper or expected. What do you want?" She opened her mouth and closed it again. No one had asked her that in months. Everyone had opinions about what she should do, how she should feel, how she should behave, but no one had asked what she actually wanted. "I do not know any more," she said finally. "I love Thomas. I miss him every day. But I am also lonely, and I am tired of being sad all the time. I am tired of wearing black and sitting in my room and feeling like I am not allowed to enjoy anything ever again. Is that terrible? Does that make me a bad person? No." Lucas reached out and then stopped himself, his hand falling back to his side. "It makes you human. Grief is not supposed to be forever, Zara. It is supposed to be a season, a hard season, but one that eventually changes into something else." His mother is still deep in mourning. She wears a veil everywhere. She can barely function. That is her choice. It does not have to be yours. He paused, choosing his words carefully. "When my brother died, I thought I had to carry that pain forever, thought it would be disrespectful to let it go. But holding on to grief like that, it is like carrying a stone. After a while, the weight breaks you. You can remember someone, can love someone who is gone without destroying yourself in the process." Tears were streaming down Zara's face now, hot and fast. "I am afraid. I am afraid that if I let go of the grief, I will forget him, that he will disappear completely." "You will not forget." Lucas's voice was gentle but certain. "The people we love do not disappear just because we start living again. They stay with us, just in a different way." Zara wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand, not caring that she was crying in front of him. Something was breaking open inside her chest, some tight knot that had been there since the funeral. "I think I might have feelings for you," she whispered, "and I feel so guilty about it. Like I am betraying Thomas by even thinking about another man." "Are you betraying him?" Lucas asked quietly. "Or are you just trying to survive?" She had no answer. They stood in the dim stable, the horses shifting in their stalls, and Zara felt poised on the edge of something. A decision. A choice between the life she had been living and something new and unknown. "I need time," she said. "I need to think." "Take all the time you need." Lucas turned back to his horse. "I am not going anywhere." Zara walked back to the boarding house with her heart pounding. She felt scraped raw, vulnerable, but also somehow lighter than she had in months. She went to her room and pulled out the box where she kept Thomas's things. His pocket watch, the last letter he had written her, a photograph taken on their wedding day. She looked at his face, trying to imagine what he would want for her. Thomas had been a dreamer, an optimist, a man who always believed the next prospect would be the one that struck it rich. He had loved big and lived big and died too young in a mining accident that never should have happened. Would he want her to spend the rest of her life in mourning? Or would he want her to find a way to be happy again? She thought she knew the answer. Thomas would have wanted her to live. He would have hated seeing her dressed in black, isolated and sad. He had always said he wanted her to be happy, even when his schemes failed and they had no money. Even when things were hard. Happiness had been important to him, but knowing what Thomas would have wanted and giving herself permission to pursue it were two different things. The weight of expectation was heavy. Robert's disapproval, Sarah's grief, the whole town watching and judging. September came with cooler nights and the first hints of autumn in the air. Lucas continued his quiet courtship, if courtship was what it was. He fixed things around the boarding house, left flowers, occasionally walked beside her to church on Sunday mornings. They talked sometimes, brief conversations where he listened more than he spoke, where his silences were as meaningful as his words. Zara found herself falling slowly and inexorably, and the guilt nearly crushed her. She would have moments of happiness, walking with Lucas or finding a new bouquet of wildflowers, and then the shame would slam down like a door. Too soon. It was too soon. Only 9 months since Thomas died. What kind of wife moved on so quickly? But another voice in her head, quieter but more persistent, kept asking, how long is long enough? A year? 2 years? 10? When would she have paid her debt to the dead and earned the right to live again? In October, Robert returned with his wife and children for a Sunday visit. He found Zara and Lucas sitting on the boarding house porch, not touching, just talking quietly in the afternoon sun. His face went red with anger. "I need to speak with you," he said to Zara, his voice tight. "Alone." Lucas stood immediately and nodded to Zara, then walked away without a word. Robert watched him go with barely concealed disgust. "This has to stop," Robert said as soon as Lucas was out of earshot. "This ridiculous display. You are embarrassing yourself and the family." "We were talking," Zara said, keeping her voice level. "There is nothing inappropriate in a conversation. Everything about this is inappropriate. You are a widow. You should be in mourning for at least 2 years, preferably more. Instead, you are carrying on with some vagrant cowboy, flaunting your lack of respect for my brother's memory." "I respect Thomas's memory every single day." Zara stood to face him. "But I am also alive, Robert. I am 24 years old and I am alive, and I have to find a way to keep living. Thomas would not have wanted me to bury myself with him. You do not know what Thomas would have wanted. I was married to him. I knew him better than anyone except perhaps you, and I know he would not want this. He would not want me locked away in mourning forever, refusing to feel anything good, punishing myself for surviving him." Robert's jaw worked. "If you continue down this path, if you insist on disgracing yourself with this man, you will no longer be welcome in our family. Mother is already distraught. She sees your behavior as a personal betrayal. You are making her grieving harder." "I am not responsible for Sarah's grief," Zara said, and the words felt like breaking free from chains. "I am sorry she is suffering. I know what it is like to lose someone you love. But I cannot live my entire life trying to make her feel better by being miserable myself. That is not fair and it is not right. So that is your choice. You would choose this cowboy over your husband's family. I am not choosing anyone over anyone. I am just choosing to live." Zara's voice shook, but she kept going. "I love Thomas. I will always love Thomas. But he is gone, Robert. He died almost a year ago, and I have to figure out how to exist in the world without him. If that means people judge me, then so be it. I cannot carry the weight of everyone's expectations anymore. It is breaking me." Robert stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Zara sank back onto the porch steps, her whole body trembling. She had done it. She had finally said what she needed to say, and the relief was overwhelming even though she knew there would be consequences. Lucas appeared from around the corner of the building a few minutes later. "Heard most of that," he admitted. "I was not trying to eavesdrop. Just did not want to leave in case you needed help. I think I just severed ties with my late husband's family." Zara laughed, a shaky sound. "I should probably feel worse about that than I do." "You feel bad," she thought about it. "A little, but mostly I feel free. Is that wrong?" "No." Lucas sat down beside her on the steps, careful to leave space between them. "Sounds about right to me." They sat in silence for a while, watching the street. Then Lucas spoke again, his words slow and measured. "I want to court you properly. Want to take you to the harvest dance next month. Want to walk with you on Sunday afternoons. Want people to know I am interested in building something with you, but only if that is what you want. Only if you are ready." Zara's heart was pounding. This was the moment, the choice. She could say no, could retreat back into mourning, could spend another year or two in black dresses proving her devotion to a dead man. Or she could say yes, could choose life, could take this quiet, patient man's hand and see what might grow between them. "I want that," she whispered. "I am afraid, but I want that." Lucas looked at her, and for the first time since she had met him, he smiled. It transformed his whole face, made him look younger and less weathered. "Good. That is good." The harvest dance was in November, held in the same social hall where Zara had laughed that first night. She had put away her black dress finally, after nearly a year, and wore a simple gray one instead. Half mourning, the ladies called it, the transitional stage between full mourning and regular life. It felt right. Lucas came to fetch her in clean clothes with his hair combed back, looking uncomfortable but determined. He offered his arm and she took it, aware of people watching as they walked through town together. Let them watch. Let them talk. She was done living her life for other people's approval. The dance was lively, full of music and laughter, and the whole town celebrating another successful harvest. Zara stood at the edge of the room feeling nervous, wondering if she had made a mistake coming here. Then she looked at Lucas, saw his patient gray eyes watching her, and made a decision. "Dance with me," she said. He blinked, clearly surprised. "I am not much of a dancer." "I remember. You are actually quite terrible at it. Dance with me anyway." So they danced, awkward and stumbling, and Zara laughed. A real laugh, full and genuine and unforced. Lucas laughed too, a rusty sound like he was out of practice. And suddenly they were both laughing, holding onto each other in the middle of the dance floor while the music swirled around them. When the dance ended, Lucas pulled her outside into the cool November night. "I am in love with you," he said, the words coming out in a rush like he had been holding them back for too long. "Have been for months. Maybe since that first night when you laughed. I know it is too soon for you. I know you are still figuring things out, but I needed you to know. I want a life with you, Zara. Want to buy land and build a house and make a home. Want to wake up next to you every morning. Want to earn the right to make you laugh every single day." Zara felt tears streaming down her face again, but this time they were different. Not the heavy tears of grief, but something lighter, something almost like joy. "I love you too," she said, and felt the truth of it in her bones. "I did not think I could love anyone again. Thought I used up all my love on Thomas. But apparently hearts do not work that way. Apparently you can lose someone and still have room for someone new. I love you, Lucas. I am still scared and I still miss Thomas, but I love you." He kissed her then, gentle and careful, like she was something precious that might break. She kissed him back and felt the last chains of guilt and obligation fall away. This was not betrayal. This was survival. This was choosing life. They were married in January of 1878, a quiet ceremony with just Mrs. Chen and a few friends present. No one from Thomas's family came, and Zara had made her peace with that. She wore a blue dress instead of white, and Lucas wore his best shirt and looked at her like she had hung the moon. They bought land south of Deadwood with Lucas's savings, a small ranch with good water and enough grazing for a modest herd. The first months were hard work, building a house and barn, proving up the claim, learning to work together. But they were good months too. Lucas was an easy man to live with, calm and steady and surprisingly funny in his quiet way. He still did not talk much, but Zara had learned to read his silences, to understand the language of his actions. She still thought about Thomas sometimes. Still had days when grief caught her by surprise, when she would see something that reminded her of him and feel the loss all over again. But those days grew fewer and farther between, and Lucas never seemed threatened by her memories. He understood that her heart was big enough for both love and loss, that one did not diminish the other. In the spring of 1879, Zara gave birth to a daughter. They named her Winnie, and she had Lucas's gray eyes and Zara's dark hair and a laugh that could light up the whole house. Lucas was gentle with her, patient and devoted, and watching him with their daughter made Zara fall in love with him all over again. The summer that Winnie turned 1, Robert made an unexpected visit to the ranch. He looked older, tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. He stood in the yard for a long moment before speaking. "My mother died last month," he said finally. "The grief ate her alive. She just gave up eventually." Zara felt a stab of sorrow. "I am sorry, Robert, truly." "I came to tell you that you were right." Robert's voice was rough. "That day on the porch when we argued. You were right. She chose grief over living and it killed her. I watched it happen and did not know how to stop it. I thought we were honoring Thomas by mourning so hard, but we were just destroying ourselves." "You did what you thought was right," Zara said gently. "You cannot blame yourself for that. I blamed you for long enough. Seemed only fair to blame myself for a while." He looked past her to where Lucas was working in the barn, where Winnie was toddling around the yard with a wooden horse. "You look happy, both of you." "We are, most days." Zara paused. "Do you want to stay for supper, meet your niece properly?" Robert hesitated, then nodded. "I would like that." It was not a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. Robert left the next morning, and Zara stood watching him ride away with Winnie on her hip. Lucas came up beside her and put his arm around her waist. "You did good," he said. "We both did." The years passed with the steady rhythm of ranch life. They added to their herd, built a new barn, weathered droughts and hard winters and all the challenges that came with making a life on the frontier. Zara helped organize a new church in Black Hawk and worked with Mrs. Chen to establish a school. Lucas served on the local Cattlemen's Association and earned a reputation as a fair, honest man. In the fall of 1881, a young widow moved to their area, a woman named Emma, whose husband had died in a riding accident. Zara saw her at church, saw the familiar look of suffocating grief, the black dress that seemed to drain all the color from her face. She introduced herself after the service. "I lost my first husband too," Zara said quietly. "A long time ago. I know how hard it is." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Everyone keeps telling me it will get better, but I cannot imagine ever feeling anything but this." "I know. I felt that way too, but it does get better eventually, if you let it." Zara squeezed her hand. "Would you come to the harvest dance next week, just to get out of the house?" "You do not have to stay long." Emma came to the dance, reluctant and stiff in her mourning clothes. She stood at the edge of the room with her arms crossed, and Zara remembered standing in almost the same spot 3 years earlier, convinced she would never smile again. She caught Lucas's eye across the room and nodded. Lucas walked over to where Emma was standing and without a word began to dance. Not with her, just near her. The same ridiculous, ungainly jig he had danced for Zara that first night. Arms windmilling, hopping on one foot, completely absurd. People stopped to stare. Emma stared too, her mouth falling open in shock, and then, against her will, she laughed. Just a small sound at first, quickly stifled. But Zara saw the crack, saw the first break in the wall of grief. She walked over and took Lucas's hand, pulling him into a proper dance. "You are still terrible at this," she said, loud enough for Emma to hear. "Always will be," Lucas agreed. "But you dance with me anyway." "I do. Every chance I get." They swirled around the floor, and Zara saw Emma watching them with something like longing in her face. The longing to believe that life could be good again. That happiness was not betrayal, that it was possible to lose someone and still find joy. Later that evening, Zara brought Emma a cup of punch and sat beside her. "My husband danced like a fool to make me laugh when I first met him. I was so angry at myself for laughing. Felt like I was dishonoring my late husband's memory. But Lucas taught me something important. He taught me that living does not mean forgetting, that you can carry love and loss together. That grief is supposed to change shape eventually, supposed to become something you carry instead of something that carries you." Emma wiped at her eyes. "How long did it take before you felt normal again?" "I am not sure I ever felt normal. But I started feeling like myself again after about a year. Started feeling like life might be worth living after maybe 18 months. And now, 3 years later, I am happy most days. I still miss my first husband sometimes, still think about him. But I also love my current husband, and I love my daughter, and I love the life we have built. All of those things are true at the same time." "I do not know if I can do that," Emma whispered. "You do not have to decide right now. Just try to take it one day at a time. Try to let yourself feel good things when they come, even if it feels wrong at first. The guilt gets easier. I promise." Emma came to the ranch for supper the following week, and then the week after that. Slowly, gradually, Zara watched her come back to life. It was like watching spring arrive after a hard winter, small green shoots pushing up through the snow. By Christmas, Emma was wearing gray instead of black, and she had started to smile more often. On a cold January afternoon, Zara stood in her kitchen making bread while Winnie played on the floor. Lucas came in from the barn, stamping snow from his boots, and crossed the room to kiss the top of her head. "Good day," he asked. "Good day," she agreed. "Emma is coming for supper tomorrow. I think she is going to accept that teaching position at the school. Good for her." Lucas poured himself coffee and leaned against the counter, watching her work. "You are a good friend to her, helping her through this." "Someone helped me through it. Seemed only right to pass it along." Zara looked up at him. "Do you ever regret it, the way we started, how fast things moved?" "No." The answer was immediate and certain. "You needed help, I gave it. You needed time, I gave you that too. And now we have this." He gestured around the warm kitchen, at Winnie playing on the floor, at the life they had built together. "No regrets. None at all. I love you," Zara said. "I do not say it enough, but I love you more than I can put into words. You gave me my life back." "We gave each other our lives back," Lucas corrected. "That is how this works." That night, after Winnie was asleep and the fire had burned down to embers, they lay in bed talking about their plans for the spring. More cattle, maybe some chickens, definitely a bigger vegetable garden, small, ordinary dreams. The kind of dreams you get to have when you have chosen life over grief, when you have allowed yourself to heal. Zara thought about the woman she had been 3 years ago, standing in the mud outside a social hall, swearing she would never smile again. She had meant it with her whole heart in that moment, had been certain that happiness was impossible, that joy would be a betrayal of the man she had lost. But Lucas had taught her different, not with words because he was never much for words, but with patient presence. With split wood and wildflowers and fixed steps, with a ridiculous jig in the mud and a quiet steadiness that gave her permission to feel again. He had shown her that love does not have to be a choice between the dead and the living, that hearts are bigger than we think, that it is possible to honor the past while still embracing the future. She fell asleep with Lucas's arm around her waist and Winnie sleeping in the next room, and for the first time in years, she did not dream about Thomas. She dreamed about spring coming to the ranch, about wildflowers blooming in the meadow, about her daughter learning to ride and Lucas teaching her with infinite patience. She dreamed about a future full of ordinary joys and small happinesses, the kind of life that Thomas would have wanted for her. The kind of life she had finally given herself permission to live. In the morning, she would wake up and make breakfast and help Lucas with the chores. She would work in the kitchen and play with Winnie and maybe ride into town to visit Mrs. Chen. She would live her life fully and without apology, carrying both love and loss in her heart, because that was what it meant to be human. That was what it meant to survive grief without being destroyed by it. But for now she slept, deeply and peacefully, a woman who had learned that the way through sorrow was not to deny joy when it arrived but to embrace it with both hands. A woman who had laughed against her will, and then, slowly and painfully, had given herself permission to keep laughing. A woman who had sworn she would never smile again, but who now smiled every single day, and meant it every time. The harvest dance came around again in the fall of 1882, and this time Zara was the one who grabbed Lucas's hand and pulled him onto the dance floor first. They danced badly, as always, stepping on each other's toes and laughing at themselves. Emma danced too, with a local rancher who had been courting her gently for months. Mrs. Chen sat on the sidelines watching with approval, drinking punch and declaring that everyone was much too serious about everything these days. When the music slowed, Lucas pulled Zara close and they swayed together in the center of the room. "Happy?" he asked. "Yes," she said simply. "Very happy." And she was. The grief had not disappeared completely, probably never would. But it had transformed into something she could carry, a bittersweet memory instead of an open wound. She had loved Thomas and she loved Lucas, and there was room in her heart for both. Room for sorrow and joy to exist side by side. Room for the past and the future to coexist without canceling each other out. That was the gift Lucas had given her. Not the gift of forgetting, but the gift of remembering without being destroyed by it. The gift of a jig danced in the mud on a night when she thought she would never feel anything good again. The gift of patience and kindness, and a love that did not demand she erase her history, but simply made room for her to have a future. They stayed at the dance until late, until Winnie fell asleep on Zara's shoulder, and Lucas carried her out to the wagon. They drove home under stars that seemed close enough to touch, the autumn air crisp and cold, and Zara leaned against her husband's shoulder and felt content all the way down to her bones. This was her life now. Not the life she had planned, not the life she had imagined when she married Thomas, full of hope and dreams, but a good life nonetheless. A life built on second chances and hard-won joy. A life that proved grief did not have to be the end of the story, just a difficult chapter in a longer tale. When they reached the ranch, Lucas carried Winnie inside and tucked her into bed while Zara banked the fire for the night. They moved around each other with the easy comfort of long practice, saying little because they did not need many words anymore. Then they went to bed themselves, fitting together like two pieces of the same puzzle, and Zara said a silent prayer of gratitude for all of it. The grief that had taught her how strong she was. The cowboy who had danced a jig to make her laugh. The daughter sleeping in the next room. The life they had built together from loss and hope and stubborn, persistent love. She had sworn she would never smile again, and she had meant it. But life, it turned out, had other plans. Better plans. Plans that included a man who split wood before dawn and left wildflowers on windowsills. Plans that included a ranch in the Dakota hills, and a child with gray eyes and laughter that echoed through the house. Plans that included second chances and new beginnings, and the revolutionary idea that loving again was not betrayal but the highest form of honoring the dead. Zara Ashford fell asleep smiling, and when she dreamed of wildflowers blooming across an endless prairie, bright and beautiful and stubbornly alive despite the harsh conditions. Just like her. Just like all of them who had learned that the way through grief was not around it but straight through the center, and that on the other side of all that darkness was light waiting to break through if you were brave enough to let it.